energy gives life to you.
And welcome to my showcase of a Volatile Dead build. Yes, VD is not dead. It is, in fact, fairly good, in my opinion. So, what does Volatile Dead look like for anyone who hasn't seen it in PoE2? Well, it's pretty similar to PoE1. A lot of great balls of fire. So, Volatile Dead in PoE2 is one of those weird skills that doesn't come from a gem. It comes from items. In this case, wands. And they grant the skill, and I haven't seen any on the market that are level 20, so this is kind of basically the highest level you can buy. So, Volatile Dead usually just relies on corpses. And that's pretty inconvenient, especially for bossing, but there's a really convenient way to turn zombies, not zombies, skeletons into corpses, and that is the Sacrifice Aura. It takes up 60% of your spirit, but in return, your undead reviving minions can be used in place of corpses, which is why I have 11 skeletal clerics here, and when I cast Volatile Dead, well, there's a 60% chance that they won't disappear, they won't be consumed, and they will turn into a fireball. So, Volatile Dead is slightly different from PoE1 and PoE2 in that it does not care about corpse or minion life. It just gives flat damage, flat fire damage. This is both good and bad. It's bad because you don't have the minion life scaling vector. It's good in that you don't need to worry about scaling minion life, I guess. My skeletal clerics do have meat shield, which gives 50% more life, but that's mostly to try to keep them alive. So, how do we scale this damage? Well, obviously, we take some fire damage on the tree. We also take some gem levels. We try to get, what have we got? +7 from global modifiers. So, oops. Obviously we have +5 on the wand itself. That's minion skills. And then we have +2 from the amulet. One kind of pain in the ass thing is that what is it called? There's a jewel that gives +3 to all skill, like to specific skills, but it doesn't do it for item granted skills, which is really annoying. So I could have had another +3, but GGG didn't implement that. Another thing that we're using is exposure effect. So as a Stormweaver, we get 20% extra exposure. So normally it's 20, now it's 40. And there's quite a fair bit of exposure effect on the tree. I'm getting 10, 20, 30, no wait, sorry, 10, 20, 50% exposure from this wheel, increased exposure, and then another 25% increased exposure from here. This basically means that I can expose about, I think it's around 82, 83% exposure on enemies, which is a lot. And exposure can go negative. Penetration can't, but exposure can. So if the monster has 40% fire res, and I put 80 exposure on him, he has -40 now. How do we apply that exposure? Well, there's a really fun trick with flammability. You can apply... Titan Curse just gives it more effect. Burning Inscription. Flammability is a runic inscription, so you can put Burning Inscription on it. And Burning Inscription is a spell that creates ignited ground based off your maximum mana, and I've got like 2.7k max mana, which I know isn't a lot by mana stacker standards, but it's still pretty good. So this deals 270, 540 fire damage And that's enough to ignite pretty much anything, including bosses. And when it ignites, it does fire exposure. And I get another 30% increased exposure effect here from the Spore Gem. So I basically, all I have to do is slap down flammability, which to be fair does cost like 400 mana. And I get like 40 minus 52% fire res from flammability with increased effect. I think something like that, or maybe 47. And then another 80 odd exposure, so I'm applying like minus 120% fire res to most things that I bother using flammability for. And this isn't for like white mobs or blue mobs, this is for rares and bosses. So that's honestly the biggest way I'm scaling damage is exposure. It's just really good with Stormweaver. I'm also just trying to get as many balls out as possible, and that's why I'm using cast speed. I've got spell echo, an arcane tempo, and then I'm taking a lot of cast speed on the tree. There's a whole bunch over here, and I'm increasing effective arcane surge because we've perma arcane surge, and same thing down here. Yeah, so a ton of effective arcane surge, which also helps with mana regen. So, yeah, and then there's also that node that gives increased spell damage per 100 maximum mana, so that's pretty good. So yeah, this is why I've chosen to go Stormweaver here, whereas, well, I don't know what other people have been using for Volatile Dead. I don't think anyone's really played it. So, how do we keep up the corpses? Because, here's the thing. This only gives me a 60% chance not to destroy consumed corpses. So if I sit here and just spam, you can see in the top left corner, the number of clerics I have is going down at a pretty steady rate. So like now I have 1, and it's going to take like 10 seconds to respawn the rest. How do I map with this? Well, the good thing about mapping is that it generates corpses when I kill shit. So honestly, mapping is fine, because as long as you're consistently killing things, wherever your cursor is pointing, you just mouse over. You generally point in the direction of things you've already killed, and it'll use those corpses, and it'll save your skeleton clerics. The skeleton clerics also have a chance to revive each other. I mean, they always do, but like, you can see they're always busy trying to revive each other, or heal each other. This is actually one of their sneaky downsides. If you enter a map with burning ground or like that has gas poison clouds, they will not move. They will go into those areas and then occupy themselves healing each other, which means they stand still, which is really annoying. So that's a downside of clerics. But for the most part, they're great for providing ammunition. This is why I tried doing a cold version of this, because I like freezing things, and it didn't work because it destroyed all the corpses, which was really sad. This is the only time I hate corpse destruction with freeze shatters. Like, I really wish I could have done that, but no, didn't quite work. Oh, I forgot one scaling vector, is we do added damage. So we gain 26% of damage as extra lightning damage, and we use this awesome scepter, and we want to use scepters because we want a lot of spirit for a lot of minions. And this gives us 53% of damage as extra fire damage, and also it makes enemies take elemental damage based on their lowest resistance, which in my case is going to be fire. Minus 120% fire res, which means this lightning damage that I get is also, it's basically as if they had minus 120 lightning as well. So that's pretty good. The gloves that I have now, I guess, are kind of unnecessary because they inflict multiple other exposures, so that's something I should probably change. But yeah, so the whole reason I started this build is that Volatile Dead has a secret, and you can't even see it in game. If you click on this, you see how it says additional effects from quality, blank. You don't know what it is. Turns out what it is 10% chance to not consume corpses, which is why here in the skill panel it's 60, not 50, because you get 25 from these 3 nodes on the tree, You get 25 from corpse conservation, which is 50, and that would be it, except for the sneaky, the fact that this is a quality 20 wand, which means it transfers 20% quality to the spell, which gives 10% chance to not consume corpses. This basically means that with Enazun's charge, which can get up to 31% chance to not destroy corpses with a good corruption, if you can get this with a good corruption and 20% quality, you can get really high chance to not consume corpses. There we go. 88%, and you can get up to 91 with perfect stuff. And yes, if you're a Titan or a Gemling Legionnaire, you could get 96%. However, what does Enazun's charge have, or not have, that this one does? +5 to all fire skill. It's such a damage downside that, like, I can't justify using Enazun's. It's a real shame because it's a really cool wand. Because it lets you do this. In tempo, yeah. So already you can see the damage number is way lower, even if I slap in Conk Effect. But like now with 11 skeletal clerics, if I just spam Volatile Dead, I get so many more bolts, which it looks amazing because I'm using Spell Cascade. The reason I'm using Spell Cascade here is that I can't when I only have 60% chance because it'll just annihilate. Because Spell Cascade, it rolls a chance to consume or not consume individually per cascade. It doesn't actually do it. It's not like you get one chance and then it copies itself twice. Sad. But if you want to just literally get as many balls out as possible, you have to use Enazun's charge along with Spell Cascade. And I guess Arcane Tempo, because like this is literally nearly 5 times a second that I'm casting it. And even with all that, like, you can tell they're kind of, we're down to 9. They sustain themselves pretty well, but like, most of the time you don't need to generate this, you don't need to sit there and cast it for that long anyway. So, here's another fun thing. This spell has 0 mana cost, literally 0 mana cost, which is amazing. But there's a trick, which is probably a bug, but it's a trick as well. Note how now I have 3300-ish damage. If I summon up a Mana Tempest, suddenly my damage goes up to 4600 because I've added a whole bunch of lightning damage to the party. Because Mana Tempest says, why are you blinking? It says, yeah, gain 80% of damage as lightning damage. However, even if I'm spending mana in here, you can see my mana's going up. I'm not actually spending any mana. The whole downside of Mana Tempest is that it's meant to compound and drain your mana even faster, but this does not happen with item-granted skills. Skills that cost 0 mana. So I think that's a bug. I haven't been using it that much because I feel like it's wrong, because if you read Mana Tempest's description, it says that empowers your mana-costing spells. This one doesn't cost mana, pretty sure it's a bug. So, yeah. Which sucks because it's basically 80% more damage. I guess the other damage boosting thing is Soul Offering, which just basically impales 2 skellies and I get quite a bit more damage. So, yeah. Honestly, this build is better than I thought it would be. I've been doing high tier maps. I've been doing T13s, T14, maybe tier 15s. My defense is still... I don't know how to build defense. I've basically done Mind Over Matter and Eldritch Battery. So, hooray. As well as having like 2k life and I guess with a good one it's 2700 mana. So, but honestly, like, it feels pretty good. It's slow. It's a slow build. If you want to do Delirium or Breach, this is not the build for you. So you've got to stand still or move slowly and constantly cast the balls There's no mobility. In narrow areas, you have the usual minion problems where they get stuck indoors, but thankfully now that they respawn when you move away far enough, that's mostly okay. It's mostly okay. For bossing and essences, it's amazing, in my opinion at least, because you preload the curse, flammability, you get the exposure, and then you can preload a bunch of the balls. The Volatile Dead balls have a long duration. They will just sit out there, and when an enemy appears, they'll go... and it's pretty great. So, yeah, this is Volatile Dead, and in my opinion, it is not too bad. And, yeah. And it's just a real shame that Denizens doesn't have any plus levels on it, because it'd be so amazing to just spam more Volatile Dead. But, yeah, I don't know. If you want to play this, I've literally spent maybe 2 div on this. And obviously you could get +3 to all spell levels here. My gear is pretty trash. I mean, obviously you just want a lot of spirit, so you get more minions, which is more ammunition. This was like 30x maybe, and all you really want here is that elemental resistance modifier, and I guess the gaining damage as extra fire is just a cherry on top. It is more damage.